Welcome at a Pretalk today with Somnath Biswas. Welcome, Somnath.
Thank you, Ron. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Somnath Biswas. I'm with a company called Stepstone. If you've not heard of us, but if you've heard of brands like Stepstone.de, Totaljobs, CWJobs, we are essentially in the job tech space. We have multiple job portals where ultimately it's a marketplace. Enterprises come looking for talent, advertise over there in terms of job listings. We obviously kind of look for talent. Within that, within Stepstone, I'm responsible for all the conversational AI products and as some few additional LLM-based spot solutions, parsing, etc. Been in the industry for now 20 plus years. Last 10 years, as probably for most, have been heavily in the AI space, ML, mostly NLP. That's me.
Now you're going to talk about productionizing enterprise-grade LLM agents, drivers, challenges, and
Bit of a mouthful. Yes.
We're not going to talk about the details and give away what you're going to talk about, not the details. But I want to talk about the strategic layer on top of that.
Sure.
Because once you're at the level that you're going to productionize enterprise-grade LLM agents, there's a whole story before that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the question I have about that, what are the mistakes that companies make in the steps before that, before you get to productionizing?
Yeah, I think so. It's a great question because it starts off with the driver of why even go down this route. I mean, there are simpler ways. You can have a click solution. You can basically have a click through things. So why kind of make this complicated? And this actually the journey started for us somewhere around in 2022 when we said, look, there's a clear realization, as I was saying, job tech compared to maybe other online domains is very different because it's a very high stress activity. It's a very lonely activity. It's a high stress activity. More often than not, you will apply and you'll kind of not get the result you're looking for. So there is, no matter what we think about it, there's a fair amount of emotion laden in it. And the idea was, what kind of a customer experience can we bring to our users where you're able to account, not sidestep it, but account for that emotion. And one obvious hypothesis was, why not go down the conversations route? So we actually, before we invested in AI, we actually started off with, we did a very quick POC. We effectively just had a human-to-human chat just to see whether people actually want to talk to us and want to chat about job tech, about job search. What do they talk about? And this was literally, so we requested a few colleagues from our customer service. We basically said, hey, this is what their task is. It's again human-to-human chat. The MVP it wasn't even an MVP. It was like pre-MVP, a very quick and dirty thing we put in place. But the results were positive because most of the time, I think it was roughly around 40% of the time or 40-50% of the time, people wanted to actually come with, I'm looking for this job. And they actually ended up giving more data points than what they would give on a portal because now they're expressing themselves. So it's like sense of urgency. A lot of other factors kind of came in. And we actually found that we were able to, so we kind of said, okay, so why will this be successful? We said, okay, lifetime value, customer satisfaction. So we said, are we able to help people find more jobs or right jobs for them? Lifetime value, so it went up. Customer satisfaction went up, looked positive. So that was our first driver in terms of our first foray into why conversational AI. It's a different experience. You're accounting for the emotion. Then we went down the route of at that point of time, we were basically using the intent-based bots. Again, the challenge was human-to-human works, but you can't scale it up. Intent-based bots, we did the experiment, again, an MVP. We saw the same levels of LTV, same levels of CSAT. But the fact is, again, most of the time, it was a very, for the lack of a better word, a robotic conversation. The emotion is still not there, which is why we kind of almost went down we have to go down the LLM route. And then maybe I can talk a little bit in terms of, maybe later, in terms of the various challenges around LLMs. But LLM is a very different world for those who are probably starting off, who are used to the intent-based bots and are thinking about LLM bots. One major difference is it's stochastic in nature. It's basically you will not 100% of the time get it to do whatever you want it to do. And so you have to account for those. There's a big element where hallucination kind of comes in, where you're basically, it will, if it does not have enough data, it will make stuff up. And whilst these are probably okay for, the not so serious kind of use cases, but especially when you're in the enterprise space, you have to account for hallucination. You have to account for bias. You have to account for toxicity. You have to account for latency of the experience. So we kind of went through an entire host of things in terms of, how do we kind of bring our latency down? How do we bring our cost down? One other factor is most people don't realize this, but LLMs are costly. Now the costs have gone down drastically. Now you have, open weight models as well, which bring the cost down. But speaking early 2023, the costs were fairly high. So cost was another factor. Cost of testing is another factor. So cost of productionizing is one, but cost of testing is another. So we had to kind of go through a number of factors before we actually, first of all, why conversational AI? That itself was a question we asked ourselves. Should we bring in AI itself? So why conversation? Then should we bring in AI itself? And then should we bring in LLM? And if so, LLM, then all the various factors. We had to kind of consider those.
Let me take one step back. Because you take a decision, okay, let's, you go in steps. Let's first do intent-based. My experience is that things develop so fast that you can't develop the intent so fast, and that although in the beginning you might have a great customer experience, as you go down the line and it's not well maintained, the customer experience goes down. But the other thing which you said is that in a bot they give more information, and this is interesting because you see that, for instance, in companies that did a test in Holland with companies that help people with debts. And it turned out that people are more willing to give information to the bot because it's not judgmental. It just, it's a fact. You state a fact and it takes it into account. And then based on that, it tries to help you, which sort of takes away barriers which nobody ever expected it would. That is really interesting. Is that's what you're seeing, right?
Yes. So there are two probably relevant comments on this. One, obviously, so when you're looking at a form, it's a very defined thing. What's your job title? What's your location, etc. Unless you have a feel for what's your urgency level, users will not give that because they're almost, responding to this. When it's an open text, when they're almost pouring their heart out, at that point of time, they are actually, expressing what they're feeling, and there's those aspects of in fact, people come back and say, I've lost my job. I'm urgently looking for it. Or I went through this, accident or, personal tragedy and I'm going through this. So there's a lot of emotion that people volunteer. And then it is for the product team and it is for the designing team to basically account for that and then react back. Because if you're not able to react back, that's the worst kind of experience. Someone's just poured their heart out and you've basically just, done that. So, but you're right, absolutely. People volunteer a lot more data points, a lot more sub data points than they do. And so that is one counterintuitive point for the bot. But another counterintuitive point was we actually found that the empathy level of the conversation went up with the bot compared to human. Now that's a very counter point. But the fact is, a human can only have an empathetic discussion first 10, first 20, first 30, first 50. After that, it's a human on the other side as well. That person also gets worn down. Compare that with a bot, it is consistently there for you. It is reacting to you. The emotion level is there. So actually, when you're talking about naturalness, so we measure things like empathy and naturalness of conversations, we've actually seen higher ratios in an LLM based conversation than a human based conversation. So and that's a fact because it's consistent over there. It's not getting tired. It doesn't have to kind of take a break. Doesn't have personal problems that kind of get interwoven with what they are kind of seeing from the user as well. So yeah, talking about counterintuitive points, one, more information in a conversation, and definitely a lot more natural, a lot more empathetic as well.
Given that you use LLMs and people give you so much private information because, as we just said, they pour their hearts out. how do you manage the privacy? Because I imagine that that is one of the, everybody
Absolutely.
knows it's a big issue.
Absolutely. So again, the fact is, so obviously when we are having a discussion, there's an element of, knowing the user and extracting certain data points. But any kind of transcripts, we kind of follow the typical data privacy GDPR aspects around it. But even when we are kind of doing our audits, our transcripts are anonymized. So we actually we will see where people have kind of done this, but anything that is PII, for instance, even when we had a human on the other side, even the agents' names, etc., were anonymized, so that there is no way to link back saying, "Oh, this was a conversation that Doron had with Somnath." So there's an element. So more, in fact, from a GDPR perspective, from a right to be forgotten perspective, all those aspects are taken care of. We additionally have elements where even the interface that our agents use for auditing, we have it anonymized. And then most of the audit that we do now, we've actually got to the point where we have LLMs as judges. So very rarely would you actually have, so humans would mostly come in, either if it's a new journey, or they're mostly in the audit mode, kind of thing.
Can I summarize what you just said in
Yeah.
compliance by design? And actually, you had it installed while building, so it doesn't become a problem later. And I think if you talk about productionizing enterprise grade LLM agents, that complies by design is one of the most important things, because if you have to do it later on, then the costs are, besides making mistakes.
You're absolutely right. And so for us, actually, we've actually had to delay our go lives because we were not, 100% confident about it. But we compliance right from the start. And additionally, maybe I can talk a little bit of, I touched upon those things in terms of hallucination, bias, and toxicity. We actually have 3 layers of by which we kind of do that. So there is an element where we have our necessary guardrails in place to prevent bias, to prevent toxicity, to prevent hallucination whilst the conversation is happening. So you've kind of given it the instruction. But additionally, we actually have LLMs as judges who on a daily basis go through the transcript and then look for any instances where something has slipped through. And then that report would actually get audited by humans to double check as well. And then from time to time, we do spot checks. So we actually have 3-4 layers to kind of make sure, because it's our responsibility to our customers, to our enterprises, and to our users, that whatever information we are providing is accurate, is safe, and is basically unbiased. So it's compliance and all these aspects right from the start, because as you said, if you don't do it, it's a huge concern to kind of even go back and then catch up on that. Product trains tend to run away. So yes, we've been very conscious. It's a good observation. We've been conscious about these aspects right from the start.
One question that comes to mind now: the European AI Act, 2nd of February is the first landmark.
Yeah.
Did you guys take that into account when designing?
We actually, so this has been in the offing for a while. So we always knew that there was some kind of a regulatory requirement that was going to come in. So for instance, even when we kind of talk about conversations and auditability, we have elements like we are using the React framework. So at any point of time, which we use more for quality, but is also available for compliance. We can actually go in and say, okay, if the bot saw this and reacted to this, why did that happen? So the explainability part of it is kind of built in. So it was not specifically, we definitely had the EU AI Act is going to happen sometime, and so therefore we should be ready for it. But it was by and large pure good hygiene compliance sense, where we said we need to kind of put a quality product, we need to put a safe product out there, otherwise it will not grow. People will not trust it, enterprises will not trust it. So it was more from the user perspective, that we wanted to kind of put a compliant, safe product out there. And then obviously we are kind of now, as a consequence, already. So basically we check for things like, even right from, as I said, right to be forgotten, a DSAR request, under 18, all these aspects get automatically checked. Started off with humans, and now with LLMs as judge, we kind of are able to do it at scale.
And did you classify your application in terms of the AI Act?
In terms of, I think we are, and I don't want to kind of say something which I am not 100%. So this is where the legal team kind of has given us guidance, but we are not at a point where 100% of the decision gets taken by the bot. So from that perspective, we are not in that red
High
band,
risk.
so to speak. But we are at a point where, just like any other recommendation engines, etc., we are at a point where recommendations get made by a model, but decisions are at least not at that point.
That's but if you talk about compliance,
Yeah,
that is going to become a big thing.
yeah,
And my observation is that very few companies have a good grasp of what's happening.
yeah. I think it's one of those. You're right, and we are. So, for instance, job tech is one of those. It's in a different category. It's in the high risk category. But again, that's where you have to. If you bring in the elements of transparency, even with the user, in terms of you gave us this, and so therefore I'm responding to this. It is just good practice, and then ultimately, compliance is a way of just implementing that.
Okay. Let me take one step back to the strategic part, because what I see in the market that a lot of companies are struggling with planning for AI, and as some CEO says, "Oh, let's do AI.
Yeah,
It will save us cost." And then after a year, they're disappointed that they spent so much money and they needed so many extra people, blah 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 blah. So let's stop.
yeah.
Of course, that's a waste of money. Um, how do you how do you strategize for AI and budget for AI, and not for the short term but for the long term? How do you do that? You have experience, obviously.
Yeah, I think the only way to do it is not do AI for the sake of AI, because AI is a means to an end. So there are many internal use cases where we've kind of had the discussion and we said it starts off with someone getting excited saying, "Hey, why don't we basically have a conversational journey over here? It's a better experience, a sticky experience." And we basically said, "Okay, what's the North Star over here? What are you trying to move?" And if the answer is basically something which leads us to say a click journey works out better, go for that. Start off with that. You need a conversation in scenarios where the path is more often than not straightforward. A straightforward journey is essentially where you can gather some information, happy path. More often than not, you might need it. You need, and this is the same with humans as well, right? Where we know it's a straightforward thing, we'll probably drop a message and have a email conversation. Where you know it's tricky, where you know there are multiple nuances to it, you'll say, no, I better call this person up and have that conversation. It's exactly that. So um, the only way to sidestep it is to basically not do AI, not do, in our case, not do conversational AI for the sake of it, and start off with thin slices. If you try and go for a whole, a lot of investment, you dug yourself a hole, because if it hasn't worked, then there is very little room for maneuverability as well. So short answer would be, check for the North Stars, be convinced that there is a use case for it. So it's AI. So my guidance to my PMs is it's AI first, but it's not AI only. Even in our setup, we kind of have a multi-agent setup, or basically we kind of have multiple tools that we call. In some cases, it's just a rule on the other side. So where required, use a rule engine. Where required, use an LLM agent. Where required, use an intent-based agent. It's basically your horses for courses. There is no one's put a gun to your head that you have to use LLMs only. These are tools that are available to product managers, to designers, to kind of enhance the experience, meet the goal. So first is you question yourself whether you really need AI. Second is be clear in terms of the business metrics and the North Stars that you're doing. Do a thin slice, get the results, see if there is a pivot needed, and then accordingly take it further. But if you're generating value, that's where you get your longevity of investment. It's only fair. If there is no ROI, the pivot will happen.
I agree, and that's also the agile way of working.
Yeah.
Uh, and the but is important. Normally, but is annoying, but in this case, um, if the company is messing with the budget, and you don't have arranged that you have a multi-year budget and a multi-year availability of team members and even growth in the team, then in conversational AI or in general AI, you cannot be successful, because if you have sometimes you do something, it doesn't work, and you try something else. So and you need budget to play with to get somewhere, and failure is also success, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So how do you convince, you give, I understand you, that's what you said, you give them confidence by doing something, creating the business case, doing the first slice, seeing what happens, low hanging fruit. I understand. But if you want to achieve real big movements and big gains eventually, you need to experiment like crazy and
Yeah.
find out what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that takes money and
Fine.
resources, and
Yeah.
and if the IT department is involved, then they have a choice. We do the current operating, running the business, or experimenting. And we know what happens usually. And there's something in the business, then they choose business. And then where do you
Yeah.
go?
Yeah. No, you're right. So I'll give a maybe a quick 1 minute anecdote. So fact is, I talked about cost earlier, and it's again one of those things that you anticipate saying, look, you're kind of experimenting something new. This is to conversational AI or these kind of experiences to some extent is a second degree optimization. There's a click possible. You are trying to enhance it further. So there is an element of a discretion that comes in saying, okay, we are not going to go down this further. So we were very cost conscious from the start. But this is what we did. So we kind of, in terms of our journey, we actually put down the quickest, best journey out there. We were able to show to the business in terms of the needles and the potential, and we were able to kind of give the ROI. And then we had in parallel an experiment. So we came up with some concepts. So most of the time when we talked about prompt engineering or prompts, we talk about a monolithic prompt. The entire prompt is one single piece. You're putting things over there. There's an additional cost to it. There's latency to it. There's also an element where it doesn't, if there's too many instructions, it doesn't follow it. So we actually came up with this concept of dynamic prompt assembly, where we basically said we'll first understand the intent, then put together the prompt, assemble the most optimal prompt for it, reduce the cost, bring in more accuracy, and do this. This took us, we had anticipated that this will take us a quarter to do it. Because it's an experiment, because it's a new place, there is no playbook around it. It actually took us more than a quarter. It actually took us 2 good quarters. But because we almost had this as a parallel track, so we kind of were able to back it up. This is also, there's an element of judgment call as well. That's where you as a product leader kind of come in and you take your call in terms of, should we back this, or have we kind of reached the bottom of the barrel and we are not able to innovate? But the confidence comes from the fact that you still have a happy path or a path A going, where you're able to deliver the ROI for the business, and then you've almost bought yourself time to keep experimenting and doing this. And I kid you not, we were able to do this after 2 quarters. Business was aware. They gave us the leeway because we were delivering numbers. And now with the dynamic prompt assembly, we're able to reduce the cost by 70%.
Wow.
That
is a use case.
That is a use case where you're able to back it, but you've almost bought yourself time by doing if I don't know if, so I'm from India. Cricket is a religion for us. So it's a question of you keep getting ones and twos, and then you're kind of waiting for the good ball to hit your 4 and 6. That's how it is. So you keep the scoreboard ticking, but you invest and you wait for those few big, experiments that you run, and then you basically change the game.
And I'm not sure if you had one, but if you had one, or did you have a sponsor in the board?
Absolutely. Not
how important is
from
the
person. Yeah. So and this actually started off. So our senior vice president for product, he has been very passionate about conversational AI. He actually brought me into the company for that. So we've always had the backing of a sponsor. But again, just like any other product leader, there is obviously an element of backing. There's an element of, kind of giving the leeway, but you've got to deliver the numbers. Ultimately, because it's a business, it's an ROI. So if you're not kind of showing and we actually have quarter to, so we kind of run in a very VC kind of mode. We live from quarter to quarter. So if if an idea is not able to kind of earn its value within the quarter, there's a serious discussion in terms of, is there value to it? So there is no carte blanche. It's a very startup-y kind of an environment where you're kind of delivering your numbers. If the numbers are there, you earn another quarter. And that's how it should be.
It's like a startup in a startup.
It is exactly like a startup. And that's how it should be, because that's where the hunger comes in. That's where you bring in the right set of people, and you have to, exactly as you said, you have to experiment like hell, because there is no playbook. You're trying to kind of optimize it. And that's why, as a product, if you have the discipline of what are you trying to optimize towards, it just makes it that much easier.
If you would summarize the most important lessons you've learned and you would like to share with the audience, where they can take advantage of, corporation that wants to start with AI or is already busy with AI, what are the most important lessons, takeaways?
I think it again sounds very counterintuitive, but the biggest takeaway is ask why AI. Don't start off with, because there will be many people who'll see one use case succeed, and they'll come to you because they want to sprinkle a little bit of AI on their product. Ask the question why. AI is a means to an end. Just like any other technology, it's a means to an end, LLM or otherwise, it's a means to an end. Keep your eyes focused on, in terms of North Stars, in terms of why you're doing it, your North Star metrics, work backwards from there. If you genuinely feel that AI is probably the most effective, and in some cases the only way to make this happen, then embark upon it. Otherwise, you'll end up doing a few shallow use cases. You will not get success. And then when the proper use case comes your way, you will not have the backing or the budget to work on it. So be very discerning in terms of where you're applying the skill set. It's not a cheap thing. It's a very expensive thing as well. So make sure that you're getting the ROI. That would be my guidance.
So basically, don't follow the hype. Use your mind.
Don't follow the hype. It's a very powerful tool in a product armory, because I repeat the point that I started off with earlier. Previously, we used to build products where we could not account for emotion. Now you're able to bring the emotion into the product. You're able to react. You have the potential to build an emotional connect with the user. It's a very powerful tool, but use it where required. Where you don't want to bring in too much emotion into something which could be a straightforward piece as well. So yeah, don't follow the hype.
Somnath, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person in Edinburgh in March.
Likewise. Yes.
Thank you for this pre-talk, and I wish you good luck on your actual talk in March.
Thank you, Doran. Love the conversation. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Same to you.